some of our remote viewers have concluded that yes, it's going to happen this time. That we and it will be on the same side of the sun at the same time. And if the remote viewer, and they're getting their information from ETs, from sources within the US government that tell me that yes, they are deeply concerned about it, and they're worried sick about it, and they don't know what to do about it. What could the government or anyone else tell you? What could they say to you? Would they tell you that grab your hat, dig a hole, hang on? He says, oh, it seems to be a rather nice planet, and we know about it, and all we need to do is name it. And then bless his heart, you know, he had never had a heart problem, but within a year he was dead with a heart attack. Incredible race of humans, does have a future, and it is in the stars. Mm-hmm. And we are going out there to reclaim our rightful place. It's kind of amusing considering that the last time we met, I told you it was to be my last interview. And here I am again, and you know, how can I explain that?
We have gotten the most incredible response to your interview. I have to say, it's actually been the most popular of all of our interviews.
Well,
and
nice
I think there's a reason for that.
Well, thank you.
I think that in many ways you put yourself on the line, and you actually embody the curiosity that was like rampant in all of us. And you did it at a time when, and in the military no less, and you broke rules, and you kind of stuck it out, and you're just, I don't know, a one-man disclosure project as far as I'm concerned.
Well, thank you, Carrie. That's very kind of you to say that. But let me explain something. I was a normal human being for a big portion of my life. You know, I was a career military and no-nonsense kind. I wore a crew cut. When I learned what I learned in 1963, 64, 65, it changed my life. It changed my way of thinking, and I became obsessed with what I had learned. And over the years, I've learned so much more. And as I may have mentioned to you earlier, I learned a little bit. I wanted more. You know, talk about an addiction. When you start learning some things about a subject that is so profound, the more I learned, the more I wanted to know. And the more I wanted to know, the more I learned. And the more I learned, the more obsessed I became. And you talk about losing a paradigm. My old paradigm literally crumbled around my knees. You know, the world that I thought I lived in, I learned was not the world that I lived in. And the reality that I looked around and thought I saw was not the reality that exists. Mm-hmm. That much of what we see is an illusion. It's a result of our own illusions. We humans sometimes, rather than face reality, we create a little world of our own. You know, we get up and go to work, we raise the kids, we buy a house, buy a car, take a vacation, go on about our lives, try to save money, put a little in the bank for the kids' college, and live a normal life. And then I learned that there's no such thing as a normal life. That the world that exists is not at all what we think it is. And the more I learned, as I said, my old paradigm crashed around my knees, and I'm sitting here in front of you as a human wreck, you might say, you know, as to what I used to be. Because I lived in a world that was kind of cut and dried. Oh, you know, do this, do that, pay your bills. It's not that way at all.
Well, let's cut to the chase here, because you have come forward. Actually, you contacted us, I'm going to say, and said, you've got something new to say. You've got something new to tell the people. And I know you're going to be speaking at the Bay Area conference, and this is amazing. And let's find out, what is it that's new? What is it you're willing to...
You want me to divulge to you my great revelations, which I'm planning to speak about at the conference, right?
Absolutely.
But anyhow, there are people who I think want this out. We've known for years that among the in crowd, whoever the hell they are, and no one really has ever been able to put our finger on it. We've been able to grab a couple of them from the old Magi group, the wise men they called themselves. The Magi, you've heard them referred to as Majestic 12. Well, they're a lot more than 12 now. Anyhow, I'm getting away with sharing bits and pieces and tidbits which intrigue me because I think somebody wants some of this out. But the story I was going to share with you is that in the National Reconnaissance Office, about, I guess, 4 or 5 years now, they had for a number of years a series of satellites called the Keyhole system. You've heard of it?
Yes.
Keyhole. Oh, it was super secret and probably the very best satellite system in the world. Mm-hmm. Well, they probably made it even better now. They could supposedly read a postage stamp from space. Well, there were some intriguing questions being raised by a number of people about what was known as the Ararat anomaly. Are you familiar with the Ararat anomaly?
Mount Ararat, Noah's Ark.
Okay.
And so the guys in the NRO took their keyhole system and focused on the Ararat anomaly, which is, you know, a puzzle. Well, when the word got out, when the pictures finally were downloaded, and they computerized and enhanced them and cleaned them up, and they pushed them on the wall, or they broadcast them on the wall there at NRO, the remarks went something like this, and these are actual quotes. Jesus Christ, it's a goddamn boat.
The
Jesus
good
Christ,
ship
it's
Jesus?
a goddamn boat.
The good
Jesus
ship
Christ,
Jesus?
it's a goddamn boat. Christ, it's a big boat. Okay, one would say, why would something like that be so highly classified that it is way above top secret? Why would the discovery of a boat on Mount Ararat be classified so high, far above, you know, anything? Anyhow, the story comes out. The reason they classified it is because after they discovered that it was a goddamn boat, a big goddamn boat, they inserted a team of SEALs on the site. Now, that's a term that the military uses to put a bunch of guys on a scene.
Right.
Apparently they dropped them by aircraft, they parachuted down, a dozen of them or so. They inserted them onto the scene, and these guys spent several days in this goddamn boat. And then they extracted them by helicopters. And when they extracted them, the guys brought with them some anomalous artifacts, which have never been described or named. But those anomalous artifacts is what led to this whole thing being classified not only top secret, but way the hell above. And that's a little bit of information that's come out via the network of the old
So are you
boys.
saying this is Noah's Ark?
No one knows what it is. It was originally the Ararat anomaly. But then they discovered that it was a gigantic boat, apparently. And
But a boat built by humans.
well, it appears to be. Mm-hmm. It's essentially, from what they gathered, wood. Mm-hmm. But it's a work of genius, apparently. It was intricately put together. And it's really...
And it survived all these years.
Well, apparently. The question, how many years, you know? When was the flood? The last rumor I had was 12,000 years ago. 10,500 BC.
When are they saying I mean, I'm sure you have a theory.
Well, the religious implications of it, you see. You know, every ancient culture on the planet has a similar tradition about a flood. And I'm sure there were many Noahs, so to speak, wherever. But the idea that this particular thing is so theologically sensitive that some yo-yo back there at NRO decided to classify it. And then they sent the SEALs in, and the SEALs brought back artifacts. Well, there you are, you see. What could they have possibly found in this big wreck that is so sensitive? The question arises, I don't know the answer to that. Hopefully, if the old boy still stays alive a few years, we might find out. I find that interesting, and I share it with people because it gives you an insight into that bunch of nitwits back there that classify everything.
First of all, have you had exposure to them face to face?
Me?
Yeah.
Yes, I've met some face to face.
Okay.
Now, whether they were the Anunnaki, I don't know.
Okay, well...
The ones I've run face to face were typically human.
Typically human?
I mean, they could put on a suit, tie, a dress, blue jeans, T-shirt.
Okay.
Walk in our midst and you would never know.
And they weren't 9 feet tall or higher?
No. The ones I've met and the ones I've seen aboard the ships are not that big at all. They're just like us.
Uh-huh.
So we're dealing with 4 different groups that I've concluded, my own personal view.
Okay.
Yeah, you might talk to Jim Sparks and he might tell you there are 8 or 10 or a dozen more. You know, I don't know. Mm-hmm. I can only tell you what little bit I've learned over the years. There are 4 different groups that I've encountered, and they're all humanoid. One group is completely human. And not all of the Anunnaki are 9 feet tall. They were human enough that we are related to them and they're related to us. And that lovely little story in chapter 6 of Genesis is quite true.
You have the question of the giants, the spirits that roam the earth, the elements of end-time prophecy, and so much more that are very difficult to simply just dismiss because there's just too much starting to make sense as certain events unfold.
We know for a fact that there were giants in the land of Canaan after the flood. Where did they come from? The book of Enoch and the book of the giants give very good information about the giants and the fallen angels they sprung forth and who their descendants are.
The Book of Giants is an apocrypha Hebrew book expanding a narrative in the Bible. Its discovery at Qumran dates the text's creation to before the 2nd century BC. The Book of Giants is thought to have been based on the Book of Enoch, a pseudepigraphical Hebraic work from the 3rd century BC, itself based on Genesis 6, 1-4, concerning the Nephilim, which, in the Enoch version, are the offspring of fallen angels. Aramaic fragments, along with other fragments from the Book of Enoch, were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls at Qumran. The text relates how some giants, named Oya, Ahaya, and Mawe, sons of the fallen angels, have some dreams that foresee the biblical flood. The Book of Giants, Fragment J, verses 27. Thereupon the giants began to kill each other and to abduct their wives. The creatures too began to kill each other. They chose beautiful women and demanded them in marriage. So did all carried off severally. They were subjected to tasks and services. And they from each city, and were ordered to serve the Messenians of Messenia, which was a region of Greece.
The first Messenian War was a war between Messenia and Sparta. It took place around 754 BC. In 480 BC, Leonidas, Sparta, sacrifices 300 Spartan soldiers at the Battle of Thermopylae so the main forces can escape the Persians. This is where we get the movie 300 from. Of course, they made a lot of changes to the original story. Now, why is this so important? These early nations were all descendants of fallen angels, which the Nephilim sprang forth from.
Most authors have not taken into account that this Nephilim and their children, the Eliud, could reproduce. This explains some of the strangeness of ancient mythology. Moreover, perhaps were humanoids, such as the Neanderthals came from, and why they are not of the same DNA branch as modern humans out of Africa.
And let's go to Genesis chapter 2. So we see that Flavius Josephus said that Esau and Jacob looked just alike. They looked just alike. It was just that Esau was hairy. Now, let's go to Genesis chapter 2. Let's go to verse 7. It says, And Yahuwah Elohim formed the man out of dust from the ground, and breathed into his nostrils breath of life, and the man became a living soul. So, let's go into the Hebrew, and let's go to Genesis chapter 2. And let's look up this word, man. This is talking about Adam. This is Genesis chapter 2, verse 7. Now, when you look up that word, man, it's the Hebrew word 120. Here's the root word. The root word is H119. It's the same word that described Esau. Reddish, red, or ruddy. And Esau was made from what? The dust of the ground. So what I'm going to do here, I want to show y'all some soil. That is soil. That's the dust of the ground. Adam was formed from the dust of the ground. And when you see this, when you see that, that is not a white color. This is a brown color with a reddish glow to it. Look at it. That's a brown color with a reddish glow to it. This is the same word that described Esau. Remember, these were identical twins. They looked just alike. It was just that Esau was hairy. So you see Adam being described also as red, ruddy. And he was made from the dust of the ground. When you look at the ground, it's a brown with a reddish glow. Let's get more. Did you know that Samuel was also described as the same word Esau and Adam was described? Let's prove it. Let's go to 1 Samuel 16. Let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 16. And we're going to read verse 12. Again, this is 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 12. It says, And he sent and brought him in, and he was ruddy. The same word described for Esau and Adam is also described for Solomon. And if you don't believe this is Solomon, let's read the verse before that. Let's go to verse 11. It says, There remains yet the youngest, and see, he is tending the sheep. And Solomon said to Yahshai, Send and bring him, for we do not turn around till he comes here. And he sent and brought him in, and he was ruddy. You see that? So Solomon was also ruddy. Don't believe me? Let's look into the Hebrew again. Let's look into the Hebrew. And let's go to 1 Samuel chapter 16. Remember, through thy precepts you get understanding. 1 Samuel chapter 16 and verse 12. And he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy. That word ruddy is H132. It's from H119. Reddish, red, ruddy. Solomon was a black man, and he looked just like that picture. Solomon was brown with a reddish glow. You see many of our people that look like this. They are brown with a nice reddish glow to them. This is how Esau looked. This is how Adam looked. This is how Solomon looked. But did you know that King David was also described as this same word, ruddy? Let's read it. Let's go to 1 Samuel 17. The next chapter, this is 1 Samuel chapter 17. And this is verse 42. It says, when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he despised him, for he was a youth and ruddy and of a handsome appearance. So they describe King David as ruddy and handsome. So being ruddy, being red, just like Esau, is looked upon as handsome. It's a beautiful color. Let's go into the Hebrew. Let's go into the Hebrew to prove that even King David was also described as ruddy, and is that same word that's described as Esau, that is described as Adam, that is described as Solomon, is also described for King David. Let's go to 1 Samuel again in the concordance 17 and 42. Let's see what this word ruddy means. That word ruddy, H132, is from the Hebrew word H119. It's the same word. Reddish, red, ruddy. King David also was described as ruddy. Check this picture out again. Remember, Adam was made from the dust of the ground. When you look into the ground, it's a brown color with a reddish glow. And let me prove even more that this ruddy is a brown color with a reddish glow to it. Let's prove even more that this ruddy is a brown color with a reddish glow. Again, a brown color with a reddish glow. That's what we're going to do. We're going to look up a red heifer, which is Numbers chapter 19. Again, let's go to Numbers chapter 19. And we're going to prove even more that this ruddy is a brown color with a reddish complexion, a reddish glow to it. So what we're going to do, we're going to go into a red heifer. Let's go into Numbers chapter 19. And let's go to verse 2. It says, this is the law of the Torah, which Yahuwah has commanded, saying, speak to the children of Israel, that they bring you a red heifer, a perfect one, in which there is no blemish, and on which a yoke has never come. So a red heifer, huh? Let's go to Numbers chapter 19 verse 2 in the Strong Concordance. And let's look up this red heifer. And let's find out if this is the same word that's described as everybody we looked up. So this is Numbers chapter 19, verse 2. And when you look into the Hebrew, that word red is H122. The root word is from H119. It means red, ruddy. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go into a red heifer on Google. And let's see how a red heifer looks. Is it an actual red? This is a red heifer. It's a brown heifer with a red glow. This is a red heifer. This is the same red or ruddy or reddish that describes Esau, that describes Adam, that describes Solomon, that describes King David, and the same red word that describes a red heifer. So with that, brothers and sisters, without any shadow of a doubt, that Esau himself was not so-called white. Esau looked just like his brother, identical twins. The only thing was different was Esau was very hairy.
However, Neanderthals were not the only hominin species that humans mated with. According to a new study, East Asian and European populations share genes with the Neanderthal. Also, East Asians share genes with the mysterious archaic hominin species that lived in Siberia, the Denisovians, that are close cousin to the Neanderthal.
For hundreds of years, many have tried to explain away the existence of aliens, demons, and fallen angels. It has been labeled as fiction, the stuff that movies are created from. But now, even science has uncovered some astounding facts that are baffling the minds of people all over the world. The fact that there are 145 alien genes discovered by modern scientists that claim that some DNA is not from earthly ancestors should be enough to cause us to rethink things that we label as fiction. In the May 2011 edition of the Discover magazine, titled "You Are Not Human," referring to the Asian and Caucasian race in an article titled "Meet the New Human Family," states that there were times when more than one species shared our planet. The article also states that anatomically modern humans interbred with Neanderthals in the Middle East before they populated Europe and Asia. Scientists are now saying that the Neanderthal gene is only present in the Asian and Caucasian, not in the African, and that when the Africans migrated out of Africa, they mated with something else. The question we should be asking is, where did the Neanderthal come from? Did the humankind truly evolve from apes? Did Asians and Caucasians come from the mixing of the seed of the fallen angels? Are there aliens among us? Where has this strange DNA come from? Are the demons and aliens that many claim to have seen the same entity? Lastly, where do the fallen angels spoken of in the Bible fit into all of this?
They did indeed engineer the genes and chromosomes of an existing species on this planet. God knows how long ago. Sitchin says it was 200,000 years. The information I have learned indicates that one of the major tweaking took place about 60,000 years ago. That Homo sapiens sapiens was tweaked and genetically manipulated even more. So we're coming along slowly.
Okay, so what 4 races? Let's name them, in your opinion.
Well, there are the humans.
Okay.
Some people call them the Nordics. Then you have guys that are very pale and very tall and very broad, which some people refer to as the big whites.
Okay.
And then you have the The little guys.
The Greys, and then the Anunnaki. So those are the four you're familiar with.
And not all of the Greys are official life forms.
Androids.
Humanoid androids, but they were constructed. They're laboratory products. And they often wondered why, in cases of crashes, where there were survivors, that some of them didn't come back and try to retrieve. And the story that came out among the military for many years was that they wrote them off. They went back and made more. Now there are some people who say, well, they don't have a soul. Well, I run into human beings that I began to wonder whether they had a soul. But there are two types of Greys from what I've learned. There are the little guys who would appear to be laboratory products. And then there are the 6-foot Greys, whose eyes are more round. And they're not really gray, they're just sort of a chalky, off-white color. And they seem to be an evolved race all of their own. And I think those are the ones that probably ran into Betty Hill and Barney at the incident many years ago.
Have you heard about Dan Burish talking about the Orions that are sitting in ships along with the military, actually watching the planet right now?
I've heard bits and pieces of that. I don't know too much about Dan's story. He's come up with a great many things.
Okay, but this is just new information that he's actually come forward with.
Well,
and they're watching the planet to see what happens and whether or not we have a catastrophe of any kind, and whether they might have to step in.
We have photographs, and many of them I'm going to share and show. I have slides, photographs of gigantic objects. I'm talking about humongous objects in space. And many of them are in satellites around their orbit around the planet. Many of them are in orbits around the moon, around Mars. I have a couple of pictures that I'm going to share that I got from a Soviet cosmonaut on what happened with the Phobos thing. The Russians, you know, their famous Phobos rocket system that they sent up there some years back, which got knocked out of orbit by an anomalous object that came up from the surface. But it had taken a number of outstanding photographs before it was damaged and crashed.
Okay, what will you called it an anomalous, I don't know, object that came up from the surface, meaning the surface of the
Mars.
moon?
From
our Earth.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, the Phobos program was sent to Mars because they had hoped to land a lander on the satellite Phobos. There are two circling Mars, which are anomalous. Again, that fantastic word, anomalous. Astronomers consider them anomalous because, first of all, they're going in the wrong direction for a natural satellite, whatever that means. They're too small to be natural satellites, and they're too close to the surface of Mars to have survived. Because if they were natural, they would long ago have been brought down and sucked in by gravity and crashed. The fact that they're still there puzzles everybody. So the Russians said, we're going to land on Phobos. It's about 12 miles in diameter. I think Deimos is only about 6 or 7. And they were going to take some pictures on the surface. Well, you know, apparently the intelligences up there decided, no, you're not going to do that, and bumped Phobos, the satellite that the Soviets sent up, knocked it out of orbit, and it crashed, apparently.
But they've been doing that to the JPL craft going up and around Mars
for
years now.
There is an intelligence on Mars that wants to limit our access to their reality. And they've done a damn pretty good job of it.
Well, our witness, Henry Deacon, and I don't know if you're familiar with him.
I'm familiar with him. I don't know him well.
Okay. He has said that the Anunnaki are on Mars in bases.
I agree with that.
So are they the ones shooting down those objects, you know, the various
probably.
craft from JPL and so on?
Look, Zecharia has said, and I know this old man, I respect him tremendously. He says they never left. They withdrew overtly from their activities on the planet with us, but their activities have continued covertly, both on Earth, the Moon, and Mars. And from the knowledge I have and the limited amount of information I've been able to get, that the primary focus, the primary intelligence behind all of this are the Anunnaki. The same group that genetically engineered us so many thousands of years ago.
Okay, but you've got Enki and Enlil, right? And these are warring brothers, and one is working for the positive side of humanity.
Well,
and
you
the
had
other...
this dysfunctional family. They even went to war with each other. And man was in the middle, as he always has been. You know, we were a product of their engineering. They engineered us as a slave species. They engineered us to work for them. And the Vatican is concerned about it. Anyhow, Adriano sent me an article. The human race is not going to come to an end. But it is going to be a difficult period of time when it begins. And let me tell you, it has already begun. The reaction from the sun is a clear response to the presence of this other body. Now, this other body has already been photographed by...
Okay, so we've got this interesting thing going on, and we have a huge crackdown on anything to do with Planet X. It's
Yes.
been made the laughing stock. It's an amazing thing.
Oh, the ridicule is...
I think it supersedes even the ET ridicule.
Oh, it does. It does.
I think it's been so strong, and it actually has come, I would say, from the Vatican.
Mm-hmm.
So what are they so afraid of, number one?
Now, this other body has already been photographed by telescopes in southern Chile and in New Zealand. I had asked Marcia to dig into her files. I had an article from a good friend who publishes a magazine in Rome. And Adriano, I don't know whether you know about Adriano Forgione, brilliant young man.
Yes.
Anyhow, he has connections with the Vatican. He has good friends who are Jesuit priests and astronomers. And the Vatican is concerned about it. Anyhow, Adriano sent me an article including 2 photographs that have been taken of Nibiru already, taken by primarily, I think, this observatory in Chile. But they've taken pictures at an observatory in New Zealand as well. So it's close enough now that optical telescopes have pictures of it. And they're studying it carefully to try to determine, what is it they call it, the celestial mechanics of how everything moves. Well, if our remote viewers are correct, and the ETs have given us some rundown on it, it's going to be a difficult passing. Because we and it are going to be on the same side of the sun at the same time, and that means all hell's going to break loose. Now, they have the technology. We're talking about not only Anunnaki. There are intelligences out there that began 1 billion years ago, and they have technology that puts them in a category of what Kaku would call a Type 3 civilization. Mm-hmm. So that a Type 3 civilization has the technology to mitigate the passing of Nibiru. Now, whether they do that, as you say, put a protective shield around it, Nibiru has done that for itself. They have a protective shield around their planet, which is why in the photographs it comes out as kind of reddish gold.
Okay, but the Anunnaki are here, you're saying, and yet the Anunnaki are supposedly on Nibiru as well, or what are you thinking, or what's your sources telling you about this?
The civilization, the Anunnaki civilization, is on the planet. But the Anunnaki are on this planet as well, all over the damn place, under the sea, at facilities that we know about, inside Mount Hayes in Alaska, inside Mount Perdido in the Pyrenees. There's one right in the middle of Australia, which is near Alice Springs. And what's the facility out there?
Pine Gap.
Pine Gap, yes. Thank you, my friend. Pine Gap. And that happens to be the R&R facility, according to the remote viewers.
What's R&R? I'm sorry.
Rest and relaxation. It's what we used to call it in the military.
The R&R facility for who? What, the
for
Anunnaki?
the ET
Really?
and the Anunnakis, yes.
Pine Gap.
And they're dealing with human beings. They need rest and relaxation. But anyhow, the rumor is that Pine Gap is primarily an R&R facility.
Have you been there?
I've been to Australia. I haven't been to Pine Gap, no. What could they say to you? Would they tell you that grab your hat, dig a hole, hang on? Would anything they say...
Is that what the underground bases is all about?
Well, I have always had the conviction, and I've put this together over the years, that the so-called elite, the creme de la creme, when they're self-designated, you know, they have been preparing for chaos for years. It initially was initiated by the thermonuclear threat with the Soviets. Underground, the estimate that I've heard from people who have studied it is about 2020.
Okay, but we have heard that Sitchin, as well-meaning as he may be, is working for the government. And my understanding would be is that they don't want this information out. So they're doing everything in their power to make sure that it's ridiculed, as we've observed.
Carrie, what could the government or anyone else tell you? What could they say to you? Would they tell you that grab your hat, dig a hole, hang on? Would anything they say...
Is that what the underground bases is all about?
Well, I have always had the conviction, and I've put this together over the years, that the so-called elite, the creme de la creme, when they're self-designated, you know, they have been preparing for chaos for years. It initially was initiated by the thermonuclear threat with the Soviets. Underground, fallout shelters where we could go. We had our own air conditioning. We can have our own food supplies and our own water supplies. That was a program that began that I worked very closely with when I was with FEMA over the years. I've been in underground facilities you wouldn't believe. Mm-hmm. And there are facilities everywhere that are not known. I mean, there's a big facility right under Fort Huachuca here in Arizona. I mean, a massive one. Never come out. I'm telling it now, but, there's a deep, massive underground facility under Fort Huachuca. They're all over the place. And I went to a Department of Energy school at Camp Mercury in Nevada. That was the first time I visited Site 51. I may have shared that with you. Mm-hmm. Anyhow, I went to school in 79. Department of Energy school on the radioactive emergency disaster response. Anyhow.
So you went into the underground base at 51?
No, I talked to the guys who built some of them. I also took a bus ride over the pass from Camp Mercury, which is the atomic test facility there. Major activity going on. I mean, we're talking about engineering activity. There are giant ships that come and go out of the craters. Mm-hmm. There are lights all the time. They have noticed bridges appearing and then disappearing. I mean, they're active as hell on the moon. Quote me. They've been guilty of criminal activity for years to not discuss the reality of what they knew on the moon. There are major facilities and major activities going on the moon all the time. Not only that, the moon has water. Now, whether it's a natural process from the satellite, or whether it's water that's been stored there for use, there are vaporous signs of a form of an atmosphere in the bottom of some of the craters. Now, astronomers have seen these pictures, but that dishonest bunch of nitwits won't discuss it. They're scared because you know why? 90% of their income comes from government grants. And when you've got a government grant, and that's your prime source of income, you're going to say whatever the government says you should say, or don't say whatever the government doesn't want said. Well, anyhow, there's some atmosphere on the moon, at least in the base of several of the larger craters. There is water on the moon, but there is major activity going on. I mean, we're talking about engineering activity. There are giant ships that come and go out of the craters. Mm-hmm. There are lights all the time. They have noticed bridges appearing and then disappearing. I mean, they're active as hell on the moon. But the same activity is going on Mars. Sure. You've seen my photograph, I guess. It's not only my photograph. But there is a city the size of Chicago underground on Mars that's generating so much heat it shows up in infrared photographs.
Are you in touch with John Lear?
I've met John. I've been in his house a time or two. I visited him. I have a tremendous respect for him. The reason I like John is he's been nailed, as I have, as a damn fool maverick, you know? Those say it has an orbit of 3,600 years.
So it's out there, it's on its way back in, right?
According to the Sumerians and Sitchin, apparently it is. And if you're a student of history, as one of my majors, its last pass was 1600 BC. The Sumerians and Sitchin and all of those say it has an orbit of 3,600 years. Mm-hmm. So as like many of us, you know, I count on my fingers and toes and figure out, well, 1600 BC, it has an orbit of 3,600 years. Wow, it's due. Well, apparently it is.
So
now,
why are they keeping this a secret?
Because
you're an expert on secrets.
Listen, every time Nibiru would make a pass, it was not always devastating. It would depend on whether the planet Earth and Nibiru were on the same side of the sun at the same time. Mm-hmm. And if we were on the same side of the sun at the same time, all hell would break loose on planet Earth. Well, apparently, the last pass triggered the explosion of Santorini, Thera, the volcano in the Mediterranean and the Aegean Sea. Blew its top, brought to a close the great Minoan civilization. Among other things, it affected Egypt. It's all in the records, apparently. There are even historians and theologians who say that Santorini's explosion is exactly what you're reading about when the plagues and all hit Egypt that allowed Moses to get the Israelites out. But if you look at 1600 BC and figuring that was a relatively recent pass, it's due now, and apparently the guys in the astronomical observatories know it. And that, again, is above top secret. Let me give you a tiny example. For a number of years ago, there were two brilliant guys working at the Naval Observatory in Washington. Tom Van Flandern is one who I hope you've interviewed.
No, but yeah, please continue, and we'd love to do that.
He's no longer with the Naval Observatory. The other one was the chief astronomer at the observatory, a brilliant man by the name of Robert Harrington.
Right.
And Harrington gave an interview to Zecharia Sitchin a number of years ago. I think it was 91 or so. Mm-hmm. Where he came right out and said, Dr. Sitchin, we are interested in this because it ties in perfectly with the work you've done on the Sumerians and the ancient planet Nibiru. He said, we found it, it's real, we have photographs of it.
They're coming.
Signs of the times, revelations open your mind. Hear the trumpets blowing. Shalom to my Anunnaki, be at peace. We gon' soon be set free. Hey, told the Abba, you are my doctor. If I bathe in my soul prosper, strengthen my posture, deliver me from wicked imposters. Put my body under subjection, that's carnal lockup. Tend to the soil, good seeds that should have blossomed. Nourish it with water from Abba, he sees the outcome. Pay no mind to the foolish, they playing possum. Put away childish behavior, come off colostrum. Flee from the lust of the flesh, remember Sodom. Pay no mind to commandments, that's rock bottom. Generation lost, my Abba restores your value. Take heed, the earth moves on with or without you. Vanity belongs on them hills, what it amounts to. My people touching all four corners, we coming out soon. Store up good works towards them, he would announce you. Babylon is falling, young Aki, just look around you. Hey, you can see the signs of the times. Revelations open your mind, you hear the trumpets blowing. Shalom to my Anunnaki, be at peace, we gon' soon be set free. Hey, you can see the signs of the times. Revelations open your mind, you hear the trumpets blowing. Shalom to my Anunnaki, be at peace, we gon' soon be set free. Hey.
See, when you girded with spiritual armor, you know that the battles are far from within. To keep those things from coming to the surface, which is the flesh. Peace, love, and light. I speak that in the spiritual, manifest in the physical. Insight, biblical, salvation is critical. Can't believe in God, not his word is hypocritical. Don't let the devil get to you, don't accept what he offer you. He gon' try to purchase you, but let him know your treasure stored in heaven, get behind you. He know who's beside you, the gates of heaven open, and I just want you to walk through. Self-evaluation is a must. Plus, you gotta fight the demons and the lust. Plus, we at the end time, don't fall now. At first you didn't know, but now you know now. In the book of life, I hope my name written. Trying to do what I gotta do to get in. To hell with this world, I do not fit in. Gotta watch my step, can't keep slipping. In the book of life,